Hello, welcome to Z Talk. This session, we're gonna continue to discuss Docker. In the previous two sessions, we had a good understanding of Docker basics. As of now, I believe we should be able to use whatever Docker images that were created by other engineers on Docker Hub. At this point, we're gonna figure out how do we build our own Docker images so that we can run our own application inside of our own customized containers. Here I drew a high-level procedure. Firstly, we're gonna create a file called Dockerfile. It's just a normal plain text file that contains definitions about how our custom container behaves. Once we create a Docker file, it will then be passed off to the Docker server, Docker client or Docker CLI that we have been using at our terminal. In turn, the Docker CLI will provide the Docker file to the Docker server. That's actually where the heavy lifting happens. It's gonna read the definition and build the image. Let's jump back to step one. Here is the three basic steps of creating a Docker file. Firstly, you will need to specify a base image. You're gonna build your customization on top of these base image. Once you pick the base, you will run some commands to install your dependencies or custom applications. And last but not least, you will need to specify a command to run on container startup so that anytime we take that image and create a container out of it, it will be the command that is executed to boot up that container. For example, the command we discussed in the previous session, like run hello world in hello world image. Okay, let's jump to a quick demo. In this demo, let's build a custom image that runs a Redis server. By the way, if you search for Redis on Docker Hub, like here, so you will see there's already an official Docker image out there. So as of now, let's forget about that image and try to build it on our own from scratch. Okay, before I jump to the demo, remember thumb up my video and subscribe my channel. And also feel free to leave comments. All right, cool. Okay, in my terminal, you saw already create a new folder under Docker directory. It's called redis-image. I'm gonna create a Docker file inside of these redis-image folder. Now let's jump to my Visual Studio Code. And here I already created a Docker file. Please note here, so this Docker file, the name of this file has to be like this. It has to be start with capital D, and there's no extension after it, like .txt or whatever. There's no extension, just capital D Docker file like this. So I write some comments for each of the steps we're gonna go through, and that's pretty much what I mentioned earlier in my slide. The first step, we're gonna use a existing Docker image as the base image, and then download and install some dependency or programs on top of the image. And last but not least, just tell the Docker image what to do when it starts as a container. All right, so now we need to remember the following three keywords, or in other words, they're called instructions, which basically tell Docker server what to do. And right after the instruction is something called argument to the instruction. There are a lot of instructions out there for Docker, but these three I'm gonna write down here are the most important and commonly used ones. So for now, just try to remember these three simple instructions and don't worry about anything else just yet. I will explain shortly. let me type the command. All right. So the first step will be from. And if you are using Visual Studio Code as well, like me, and you can install the Docker plugin. So once you install that, you will see once you type in something, it will show you some hints about the syntax. And here you can see from is the instruction, and the argument will be a base image. So let me finish up. Here I will use Alpine. That's the first step. The second step is gonna be the next important instruction is called run. And here I'm gonna do some apk add update Redis. And the last step, and you need to remember these instruction called cmd. And here we're gonna put some command like Redis. So, all right. So again, just try to remember these three basic and most important instructions here: from, run, and command. Don't worry about these arguments just yet. I'll explain. And cool. Let me jump to my terminal real quick. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run a command called firstly, I log into this Redis -image where the Dockerfile is stored, and I'm going to issue this command called docker build dot and hit enter. All right, pretty quick. You can see there was a image being created. That's our first custom image for Redis. All right, if you issue Docker images, you will see this image right here, the image ID, which is exactly the one here created. All right. Okay, finish up this quick demo. Let me jump back to my slide real quick, and let's kind of deep dive each of step that just happened. I'd like to explain to you a bit more about what just happened behind the scene. Let me start with a quick analogy. Writing a Docker file is like being given a computer without operating system. So basically what we need to do is to install a operating system first, and then on top of that OS, we install whatever software that we need, and then after that, we're gonna start those softwares, right? I think you already had an idea what's going on. The Alpine here was the actual OS we just installed. Now you might have follow-up question: why Alpine? What is Alpine? Well, Alpine is a popular lean operating system that only contains a set of programs that are necessary to run the following command in our step 2, which is apk add update Redis. All right, so here comes the first best practice of Docker development. Keep your images small. Small images are faster to pull over the network and faster to load into memory when starting containers. So to make your image as small as possible, the first step is to pick an appropriate base image. Do not install unnecessary packages. That's basically why we used Alpine here, because it's very lean OS. We can of course use different operating systems like Ubuntu, for example, but if that's the case, the image generated will be way bigger than the one we had just now, which in turn will slow down or the deployment when we create the container out of it. So let's move back here. As you can see, this image was just 9 megabytes. right? Okay, now let's jump back to my terminal and take a look what happened after I issue the docker build command. So obviously the docker build here, the docker build command is for creating the Docker image. And as you notice, there was a dot after Docker build. The dot here is specifying what is called the build context, which is essentially the set of files and folders that belong to these projects. All right. Okay, just for proving my point of the size of the image, let me switch to another base image, Ubuntu, like I mentioned earlier. So in this case, in this Docker file, I'm going to use Ubuntu version 18 as the base image. And on top of that, I'm going to basically same thing, install this Redis server via apt-get package manager. And then don't worry about these commands. Just the rest is same. This command is startup Redis server. All right. So let me issue the command in my terminal. Docker build. Just remember, if when we were using the Alpine base image, the final image that was being created was around 9.8 megabytes. Let's see how big of this image comes out. Okay, is being created. Let's issue Docker images here, and you can see this image is way bigger than the previous one, right? It's 103 megabytes. Is more than tripled the size of the previous one with the Alpine as the base image. That's basically my point. All right. Okay, let's take a look at the output in my terminal again after I ran the docker build command right here. The first step, the Docker server looked at our local build cache, and basically it checked out to see if the Alpine image has been downloaded before. In this case, it has not, right? So the Docker server reached out to Docker Hub and download this Alpine image, which was, step one. And step two, it ran the apk command to install Redis. Now let's jump back to my notes. So I drew some diagrams ahead of time. So I will try to explain more in detail what just happened, especially after the Alpine was downloaded. All right. Okay. In this diagram, there were three sections. This section I just draw it out the instructions inside of the Docker file. All right. And here is the Alpine image. Basically, is came out of the step one. It's build a image called Alpine. So, and here is the container. Basically, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to reproduce what happened behind the scene as step two. So basically, when Docker server saw this run instruction, what it did was to look back at the previous step right here. It looked at the image that came out of the previous step, which was the Alpine image right here. Then it create a container out of it. Basically, we call it intermediate container. So in memory, we got a brand new container at the very beginning of step two. Let me try to copy these file steps. One is we create a container out of this Alpine image. Basically, we loaded up these files system snapshot to here. right? And we don't know the startup command of these intermediate image, Alpine image. It doesn't matter. Basically, it's loaded this Alpine image right here. All those directories belongs to this Alpine image right here to this container. And then after create this container, this APK command was executed inside of this container. So basically, this command here was loaded and be executed here. And what it does is installed Redis to this container. Basically, what happened was, let me do that here. It's after run this command, you will install Redis like here and store it to the file system. That's basically step 2. Now, after the package was installed, that container, this container will be stopped. We took the file system of that container and we save it to another temporary image with a specific ID. So basically, this time is not going to be Alpine image. It's some temporary image with a unique ID. I don't know what the ID is, but it's basically the string. Like here, something like this. It will create another image. Basically, what it does is going to copy the whole thing here and paste it down here. So in this temporary image, Redis will be part of this image. All right. So that's basically step 2. Okay. Let's move on to the last step where we execute that CMD instruction, right? So I believe you can easily imagine what had happened there. So basically, since in the last step, it stopped the previous intermediate container, right? So I'm going to clear out this container. Clear it out, right? So here, basically, it looked back. So the last step, CMD Redis server, right? So basically, it looked back the image that was generated in the previous step, which was this temporary image, and create another new temporary container out of this temporary image. With the CMD instruction, it is setting the primary commands for the primary process of the container, right? So the container did not actually execute these Redis server commands. It just told the container, if you were to run for real, this is your primary command. And then, again, same like step 2, it shut it down, this temporary container, and took the snapshot of the file system and the primary command out of it, and to generate the another image, and which gonna be the final image for our build. All right. So what happened is, so basically it's gonna create a container out of these temporary image. So basically what happened is, this is a new container, right? It's going to load the file system snapshot of these temporary image to this container. So this time it contains Redis, right? And here it just put this command Redis server down here as the running process. Again, it did not actually execute its command. It just put it here. So once it's put it here, it stopped this container. So once these container is stopped, is took these snapshot out and create another image. This is gonna be the final image, right? So it take these hard drive segments, the fastest snapshots, back to these final image, and the command, the startup commands here, instead of we don't know what specific startup command was in the previous temporary image. This time we know, so it's here. This Redis server gonna be the primary startup command. So here we go. So this is what we got after the last step. This is the final image, the custom image we built out of these Dockerfile commands. All right. Okay. Let me go back here. So that's pretty much I want to share. I think after this session, you should have had a really solid understanding of Docker foundations, right? So it will be very helpful moving forward for us to build more complex images. All right. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Alright, thank you for watching my video. If you think this video is helpful, you're more than welcome to leave any comments. Remember, thumb up, subscribe my video, and also hit the notification bell. See you next time.